Today we're going to talk about cumulative frequency histograms. Let's start with the word cumulative. I believe you know what it is, but it's not a word that you use very often. Have you ever heard of the word accumulate?
Yes.
Okay, what does accumulate mean? Brandon, thanks. Say it again. Not what I was thinking of.
Bring in.
Kind of. Good. Alex?
Increase.
Say it again.
Increase.
Increase. We are accumulating. I'm accumulating great wealth. I have a great accumulation of chocolate.
You build it in.
Okay? I'm gathering it. I want more of it. If you ever watch Hoarders, they have accumulations of junk,
Nick.
in my opinion. But cumulative comes from accumulate. When you take your first quarter progressive exam, second quarter progressive exam, third quarter progressive exam, those could also be called cumulative exams because it's all the information from the start of the year that you have accumulated, and we are testing that. How you have progressed through the school year. Okay, so a cumulative exam or a cumulative frequency histogram is all the things that have been gathered together. And it's a histogram. So the bars are still going to touch. We're still thinking about things flowing smoothly from one interval into the next. I love this first example they did because I think it's the best way in the world to explain how to make a cumulative frequency histogram. So let's jump right in. These are final exam scores for a zoology class, which I think will be a pretty cool class to take and teach. But anyway, there were 180 students that took this test. So they must have several sections of zoology. Here's our frequency. Does anyone have any questions on the table? Great. Letter A. How many students scored a 60 or less on the test? Read the table. Macy, thank you. 15 students. How many students scored a 70 or less? Danny. It would be 45. Wait a second. I don't see a 45 on the table. How'd you...
You added the 30.
The 30 and the 15. Okay. How many students scored an 80 or less? Brandon. 100 even. 100 even. I don't see a 100 in that table. Where are those numbers coming from? Go ahead, Kristen.
You're taking the numbers below 80 and adding them.
Okay, so like I sort of draw the line here and I'm going to add these together. So for the 80 or less. I like it. I agree. Beautiful. Well said. Letter D. How many students scored a 90 or less? Bryce. Correct. And our last question. How many students scored 100 or less? Justine. 180. Wait a second. I've heard that 180 number before. Where did I hear that before?
In the beginning.
Yes, thank you, Annalise. Right, up in the question, 180 students took the test. Oh, so all 180 students got a 100 or less. Great.
Clearly.
Nobody got a bonus, must be. Okay, great. This is a wonderful example. You just did cumulative grades for this test. It is kind of easy. Let's slide down. We've got a table down here. Look at the difference in the table. What's going on with our frequency table versus our cumulative frequency table? Yeah, in a cumulative frequency table, that first number stays the same. We're always going back to that beginning interval. And we are accumulating, in this case, more grades. So, the way we fill it in, the first interval is almost always the same. These two are almost always the same. As a matter of fact, I've never seen one where they're not. So we'll say they're always the same. When we get to the second interval, it says how many students scored a 70 or less. So now we're going to accumulate all the scores, all the way up to 70. And
75.
up above, we said 45. How many students score an 80 or less is what our next interval says. And we added that up and got a 100. How many students scored a 90 or less? We added those, that next round of 50 to the 100, so we got 150. And then our last interval, we want to get all the way up to 100% for our scoring, and that is all of the class. What must the last entry of the cumulative frequency table always be equal to? So in other words, what is this last entry always going to equal? Go ahead, thank you, I appreciate the hands, Dan.
Total number of
Yeah, whatever, how many of the sets of data you collected. So the total. So that's a quick way to check and make sure you added correctly. That 180 should match the 180 from up above, or whatever our magic number is. Cumulative frequency histograms. You're going to add those interval values together. Let's go to the back. These are the heights of students in Mr. Munson's second period class. And these heights are given in inches. Okay, we have a frequency table. Look at what's happening here with our intervals. We have a cumulative frequency table. Can you tell the difference between those two tables? Yes. Yes. In cumulative frequency, they always start at the same place. Moving on, let's fill in our cumulative frequency. Who can I, thank you, Nick. Our first interval gets a what value? A 1. Can you go to our second interval? Go ahead.
4.
Good. You want to keep going?
Wow.
Just on a side note, I think I said it before, but I always alternate my numbers in there just so that things don't sort of blend together. I think it's easier for you to see those numbers. It's not that you have to alternate them like that, okay? So that's why they're alternated. Now, it doesn't tell us in the problem that Mr. Munson has 28 students in his class. So how can we be sure that the 28 is correct? What else could we do to verify? Macy, what do you think?
Try the last one.
That's what I'm saying. We don't have another 28 in the problem to confirm that my 28 is correct. What do you think we could do?
add up the frequency table on the other one.
Oh, so if I add all of these together, that should equal 28?
Yep.
Correct. So if you're not given it in the problem, like on the front we were told there were 180 exams, we were told how many students were in Mr. Munson's class. So you can add this up and these two numbers should match as well. All right, when we make a cumulative frequency histogram, pretty much everything is the same. This will be cumulative frequency and these are our intervals down here. I am still going to include my lightning bolt, but Mrs. Nix and Mr. Whitaker will not have you include a lightning bolt. Okay, my intervals can only be too wide to fit, and they're going to look just like the cumulative frequency intervals. So they're all going to start at 50. So just like we had yesterday, but they're all starting at the 50 mark. We're using the cumulative frequency. And this time, our frequency is cumulative. We need to get all the way up to that 28 mark. So we need to count by twos. I'm going to pause here for just a second, and then we'll talk about how to build the bars. Okay, so now we're going to build our bars as high as the cumulative frequency says. So the first one is 1, and then 4. And what should start to happen is it should start to look like a set of stairs. And again, you do not have to color them in. The important piece is that the outside edge is visible and very clear. So it should look like a set of stairs increasing as you go across. That should happen every time for a cumulative frequency histogram. It should look like a set of stairs. Regular frequency will not necessarily look like this. It could, but cumulative frequency will every single time.
So those are decreasing in the middle.
They're correct. Yep, it's not going to look like mountains and valleys and things. It's always going to be increasing. Well, I say always. When you get older, you may run into cumulative frequency histograms that decrease. That is possible.
But it's still gonna make the stair.
It's still going to make the stairs. They'll just be going down the stairs instead of up the stairs. All right, our last question has us deal just with the table. We don't have to build a cumulative frequency histogram. These are grades on an Algebra 1 quiz. So our first question, how many students took this quiz? Go ahead.
29.
29. Where'd you get that from?
It's the last number of a chart.
Correct. Because it's cumulative, you can go right to the bottom and figure that out. Letter B is a little tricky. Students receive an A if they earn a 90 or better on the quiz. How many students are going to get an A? Is it all 29?
No.
Okay.
9.
Maybe? What do you think? Macy, what are you thinking?
18, 9,
How'd you get 9?
because you take the 20 and subtract it from the 29.
But this 20?
Yes.
So you're saying the 29 in the top level minus the 20 that's just below it gets you the 9 students that have an A. So in other words, this interval stopped at 89, which means this interval is the 90 to 99, the kids who scored those grades, 90 to 99. So you're absolutely right. Those kids, the additional students that are coming in this interval, will be the ones who got their A. Nice work. That's it for cumulative frequency histograms. Remember that you are accumulating all of that information, so you're adding those together. Remember that you can tell by looking at the table, because they all start at the same place. And your graph, when you make it, should look like a set of stairs. Okay, thanks.